On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison after more than 27 years behind bars. Cameras were pointed toward the gates. Thousands of people were waiting to see the man who had become a symbol of resistance. Mandela later recalled that he had expected only a small group of prison warders and their families to be there. Instead, he walked into a massive crowd. Imagine that scene for a second. A man steps through a prison gate after nearly 3 decades of confinement, surrounded by cameras, politicians, and an entire country watching his every movement. And yet the most interesting thing about that moment wasn't what he said. It was what his presence communicated before he had the opportunity to explain himself. There are people who enter a room and immediately start talking because silence makes them uncomfortable. Then there are people who walk into the same room, say almost nothing, and somehow everyone becomes aware that they are there. The answer has less to do with aggression than most people think. Real intimidation rarely begins with threats. It begins with uncertainty. When someone cannot immediately read you, their brain starts filling in the missing information. Are you nervous, confident, angry, judging them? Psychologists have a term for what happens next: social uncertainty reduction. The less predictable someone's reactions are, the more cognitive effort other people spend trying to read them, and the more psychological weight that person unintentionally carries in the room. Think about someone who constantly explains themselves. You already know where they stand. Now compare that with someone who can sit quietly through an uncomfortable moment without rushing to fill the silence. They haven't become more powerful because they said something clever. They've become harder to control because they don't reveal every emotion the moment they feel it. This is where most people misunderstand confidence. They think it looks like speaking louder, holding stronger eye contact, taking up more space. Sometimes it does, but the deeper form of confidence is much quieter. The ability to remain internally stable while the environment tries to pull a reaction out of you. Someone insults you and you don't immediately defend your ego. Someone important enters the room and you don't change your personality to impress them. That consistency sends a signal most people can't consciously name, but they feel it instantly. It tells people your behavior isn't being controlled by whatever's happening around you. Watch what happens when one person desperately needs the other to approve of them. They start monitoring every reaction. A smile gives them confidence. A cold expression makes them nervous. They become predictable because their emotional state is constantly being handed over to someone else. Now imagine someone with nothing to prove. They listen without performing. They can say "I don't know" without feeling smaller. They may not be the loudest person in the room, but strangely, they become one of the hardest people to dismiss. Their silence has structure behind it. There's an important distinction here. Intimidation is not the same thing as fear. A bully makes people afraid. A powerful presence makes people more conscious of themselves. That's why some people become unusually careful around certain individuals, even when those individuals have never threatened them. They sense that this person notices more than they say, and because their reactions can't be easily predicted, everyone around them becomes more aware of their own behavior. You can see this in high-stakes environments everywhere. Put 2 people into a difficult negotiation. One keeps talking, explains their position 3 different ways, fills every silence, reveals how badly they want the deal. The other listens, asks a few precise questions, and allows silence to exist. When the offer isn't right, they simply say, "That doesn't work for me." Suddenly the balance changes. Not because silence is some magical technique, but because the second person has communicated something far more valuable. They are willing to walk away. The moment someone realizes they cannot easily control your need for an outcome, their ability to pressure you disappears. This is why emotionally secure people can feel intimidating without ever intending to be. They don't react to every provocation. They don't compete for attention. They can be warm without being desperate, quiet without being passive, firm without becoming aggressive. That combination is rare because most people live at one extreme or the other, making themselves smaller to keep everyone comfortable, or louder to prove they can't be ignored. The strongest presence sits somewhere in between. It doesn't ask the room for permission to exist. Your body often reveals your relationship with yourself before your words do. Someone seeking reassurance may physically check the room before speaking, laugh at comments they don't find funny, apologize unnecessarily, rush their sentences because silence feels dangerous. On the other hand, someone comfortable with themselves moves differently. Their pauses don't look like panic. Their body isn't asking, "Am I safe here?" every 5 seconds. That internal stability becomes visible without a single word. And here's where this becomes more useful than simply learning how to look intimidating, because you shouldn't try to manufacture it. The moment you start performing presence, you've already lost the thing that creates it. The real shift is much simpler. Stop abandoning your internal position every time someone challenges it. If someone disagrees with you, listen. If they make a good point, change your mind. But don't automatically surrender your position just because disagreement feels uncomfortable. If a room goes silent after you speak, resist the urge to immediately rescue the moment. You begin discovering something strange. The less desperately you manage other people's reactions, the less power those reactions have over you. That may be the real secret behind people who seem intimidating without talking. They aren't trying to dominate the room. They simply aren't negotiating their identity with it. Their confidence doesn't depend on being the smartest person present. Their silence doesn't mean they have nothing to say. Sometimes it means they've learned that not every moment deserves a response. And maybe that's the kind of presence worth building. Not the presence that makes people afraid of you, but the presence that makes people take you seriously before you ever ask them to. The kind that comes from knowing what you believe, knowing what you'll tolerate, and being completely prepared to leave situations that require you to betray yourself just to belong. Because in the end, the most powerful person in the room is rarely the one trying hardest to appear powerful. It is often the person who has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, and nothing inside them that needs the room's permission to stand where they already stand.